Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey, Startup Nation, welcome back to another episode of You Got It, the Private Practice Startup. How's everybody doing today? I am Katie, one of the co-owners, and if you're joining us for the first time, we wanted to welcome you officially to the Startup Nation family, and of course, if you're a loyal listener, welcome back. We're always excited for our guest, and this is also part of our series that we kind of pipe into the other podcast, and we are having Kimberly Bonds-Grosher back with us, but today we're talking about Kimberly's success story and where from the podcast series of where they are now, but where she is now. So we'll dive into her story and what helped her be successful in private practice. And she's also in the process of evolving her practice as well into other areas. So she'll talk a little bit about that too. But we hope that you guys joined us last week as we welcomed Allison Saponara, who talked about how to utilize Instagram to build a therapeutic brand. So if you are a big social media person, you love being on social media, and you've thought about utilizing social media, to build your practice, this would be a perfect podcast for you to listen to. A little bit about Kimberly. Kimberly is a licensed clinical social worker, executive coach, and yoga teacher in private practice in New York and also Florida. She's also an adjunct professor at the Columbia University School of Social Work. And it's interesting. I have to, like, when I'm reading the bios, I forget that for some reason my printer cuts it off several words. So Kimberly, you tell me, social work involuntary?
Faculty at Weill Cornell Medicine.
Thank you for jumping in. I'm going to have to remember next time that it does cut it off. Kimberly enjoys working with professional women, entrepreneurs, and couples, helping them design lives that allow them to, I think, work professionally while being emotionally, spiritually, and physically healthy. And a fun fact about Kim is she's a travel addict and can't wait to travel overseas again. Me too. I am ready to go. It's kind of weird thinking about being on a plane though.
I know.
Yeah. So Kimberly, before we dive into your story, for those of you who are new, our family really likes to give gifts to our new family members. So if you're new to us, we want you to head over to privatepracticestartup.com, head on over to the resources tab. There you'll see a plethora really of gifts. Love to draw your attention to our free attorney-approved customizable HIPAA form. Just go ahead and download that for free and then take whatever else you want. You are more than welcome. So Kimberly, welcome back officially. It's great to have you. It's great to connect. It's great to hear that you're going to be coming to Florida, hopefully, and we'll get to see you maybe in person.
Yes. I'm excited to be back. Thank you for having me again.
You are more than welcome. And we'll put actually the link to your last podcast. I forget the exact title of it, but we were talking about racism and tell us the exact title.
It was the impact of racial discrimination on mental health.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
So we'll also put that link to the link in our show notes page for that podcast. Man, I'm hoping I'm going to be better today. I'm feeling like a little tongue-tied already.
I understand.
So Kimberly, share with us, I don't know, I think I want to take a step back and just share your story about how did you even decide to get into the mental health field? Where did you go first? And how did you land in private practice?
Sure. So I think it started when I was in junior high school, and I went to a small Catholic school in Silver Spring, Maryland, and we got a guidance counselor somewhere. I think I was in junior high when we finally got a guidance counselor, and she was just really nice. Her office was just like so cozy and welcoming, and I found myself just wanting to go to her office just to kind of get away from the noise and the other kids sometimes. I don't think I realized then that I was an introvert. So even if I didn't really have anything to talk about, it was just a nice place to be. And then I realized then, I said, oh, I want to be able to have a space where people come and they feel warm, they feel cozy, they feel understood, and they feel heard. And I would love to be able to offer that to people. I was also one of those kids that really liked being in adult conversation, but I understood that I couldn't be in the conversation. So I would just be off to the side listening and taking notes.
Like legit?
Exactly. And
Little
just
mental
like,
notes?
yes, asking like, well, why did you make that decision? And what led you to that conclusion? And blah, blah, blah. So I just really loved hearing people's stories and wanted to kind of create a space where people felt like they could tell their story and be heard. And so I decided then that I wanted to be a therapist. And then I went through high school on the newspaper. Me and my friend, we had a column. It was like an advice column. And then in college, I majored in psychology, but ended up having a social work professor towards the end who taught a psychology class. And she told me about social work. So I ended up going and getting my master's in social work.
Very cool. Okay, we have to go
Yeah.
back to the advice column. What was the
Yes.
name of your advice column?
I don't even remember. I just remember we were on the newspaper and we asked and we were like, can we do an advice column? And they said, sure. I can't even remember if we made stuff up or kids actually put stuff in. I just remember we legit had a advice column.
So did other kids like write to you and then you?
I think so, but I do think that me and my friend, I can't remember the specifics, but I do believe that me and my friend also like supplied some questions, you know?
Gotcha.
Kinda came up with some
Sometimes you got to do
questions.
that stuff to get started.
Exactly.
It's so cool to hear that you were inspired at such a young age with the guidance counselor and feeling safe in that space and just being so inspired by that, wanting to go on that journey yourself, and then being in the advice, having an advice column, and then finding your professor who kind of guided you in the social work direction, and you're still on your journey in school, just getting ready to finish that dissertation. So tell us where you are in that process.
Oh my goodness. So I'm writing my dissertation proposal. I'm a PhD candidate at Fordham University in the School of Social Services. And my dissertation is looking at Black women in yoga and the impact that Black women who practice yoga feel like it has on their physical, emotional, and spiritual health, as well as what culturally relevant messages they feel that the yoga industry needs to have to be more inclusive.
Very cool. I'm always so impressed by people's dissertation because sometimes it takes this really micro look, and that is so interesting. We love to hear like what you discover as you complete your dissertation. That's a lot. Wow.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, and perfectly in alignment to what you do for your work and your business. And nice. Awesome.
Absolutely. I'm all about, I say, like health and wellness, bringing health and wellness to women, especially Black women, by any means necessary. So whether it's through mindfulness and meditation and yoga or therapy or coaching, I feel like there's so many entry points to help people be well. Yeah.
So it sounds like even since high school, you were always kind of working in the field, right?
Yes.
Being an advice columnist for other teens. What was your first like actual job though in the field?
It was as a social worker at a nursing home. Yeah, my best friend was working at a nursing home when I started my MSW program at Howard, and they were looking for a social worker. So she told the director of social work about me, and she took a chance on me, even though I was like a first year MSW student, came straight from undergrad. Yeah, and I never thought that I would want to work in a nursing home just because of, thinking that it was going to be so sad and this, that, and the other. It was a great experience. It was a great experience. I loved it. And then when I moved to Florida, I also worked in a nursing home.
Okay. And then where did you kind of go from there?
From there, I went to working at an inpatient psychiatric hospital, dual diagnosis, so people that struggled with psychiatric disorders as well as substance abuse disorders. And then I moved to New York and then was doing community mental health. And then I went to work for a human resources consulting firm doing EAP work. That's where I found out about coaching and fell in love with that. Also developed my interest in really working with professionals and people in the corporate sector. And then from there, I was offered a position at Weill Cornell Medicine as faculty, which was a very unique opportunity for a social worker, I feel, because usually faculty are, maybe psychologists, definitely psychiatrists and other MDs. And so that was just an amazing experience as well, and really what helped me launch my private practice.
Nice. And so before we dive into that aspect, let's just take a quick moment for our sponsor. Okay, guys, it's sponsor time. You know what? Instead of reading a script about Gusto's payroll and benefits, we wanted to tell you what small business owners say, the people who use Gusto every day. Here's what one small business owner says. With Gusto, I think of payroll as a 30-second job. The website is so friendly and a joy to use. Friendly payroll? You don't hear that every day. And how about Amy from Utah? Amy says, I love Gusto so much. It's so painless. It's like going to the spa, and we have great options and rates, even though we're a super small team. Like going to the spa? Wow. And here's what Mneet says about Gusto's support team. Whenever something comes up, I reach out and literally 24 hours later, they tell us what to do or assure us that we've already handled it. Smart technology and friendly humans, that's super cool. Honestly, the list goes on, and right now our listeners get 3 months free when they go to gusto.com/PPS. Yep, 3 months of payroll, benefits, administration, and more, totally free. Again, that's gusto.com/PPS.
There are so many ways to keep your practice organized, but Therapy Notes is by far the best. Their easy to use, secure platform lets you not only do billing, scheduling, and progress notes, but also create a client portal to share documents and request signatures. Plus, they offer amazing unlimited phone support. So when you have a question, they're there so you can get help fast. Get started with Therapy Notes today, trusted by over 60,000 professionals. Go to therapynotes.com and enter promo code PPS, as in Private Practice Startup, and you'll get 2 months for free. Also, you can listen to episode 54, where we interviewed Brad Pliner and took an in-depth view into their EHR.
Let's talk about diving into private practice or launching your private practice.
Yes. So I actually started private practice part-time in 2011. I had just finished a postgraduate training program in couples therapy. And one of the nice perks about that program was that when you left the program as a trainee, you could take the couples into your private practice. So that is how I started my private practice while working full-time.
That's like a gift.
Yes,
Yeah.
It was definitely made it worthwhile to be in the program, among other things. Then I was doing that part-time for several years. Then when I joined the faculty at Cornell, because it was a faculty position and not a working in the clinic or, in the hospital directly, it would have been a conflict of interest to have a private practice. So it became like a partnership where it was basically a group practice. So I had my clients, they were my clients, and I had their support in the marketing and the practice building and the billing and so forth. And when I left, I got to take my clients with me. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so, go ahead, Kate.
I was just wondering, how long were you there, and when was that along the timeline when you left?
So I was there for almost 5.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year in 2019, beginning of the year, I decided to leave and do private practice on my own full time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what was that experience like for you when you decided to leave that opportunity, the group practice feel with Cornell and all of the support that you had in place there, and then you were fully in private practice on your own?
I was excited. it was a great experience at Cornell. I think I learned so much. They invested in me so much in terms of training. I really learned a lot about managing my practice, really niching down and having a specialty, and really what it took to build a practice, networking and things like that, because you still had to build your practice. Like, you had to get out there and kind of make a name for yourself with other faculty for referrals and out in the community. So it was a great learning experience, but I decided at a point that if I was going to be working for somebody else, I wanted like a career trajectory. And in that position, there wasn't necessarily one. And so I was like, well, I think I want to do it for myself. I've always been very entrepreneurial. I've always wanted to work for myself. So in 2018, my husband was like, I think you just need to do it for yourself. And so I was like, well, if he's saying that and I have that support, then it's probably time to
Give you the
do
nudge.
it for myself. Mm-hmm. Yes.
What's interesting, Kimberly, is like I hear like throughout your experiences, it sounds like, your schooling and your schools were very like pro helping the therapist rather than here's your education, thanks for the student loans, bye. You know what I mean? So like there was a lot of pieces along the way and the different experiences that you had that really helped you kind of focus on business and having clients and things like that. So once you were like flying like completely solo, 2018,
Mm-hmm.
like share a little bit about your journey there. What were some of the struggles? What did you learn?
Okay, so let me back up and
Mm-hmm.
actually give you two a lot of credit, because back in 2018, I think it was, when I was gearing up to do this, I actually took your coaching program, which really helped me to like hone in even more than what I was doing, like, at work, right? So in terms of really learning how to market, in terms of really, again, honing down my niche and my specialty with who I want to work with, because even when you're working with an organization that says they want you to have a specialty and a niche, and they do, but at the same time, it's like somebody has to see who's coming in, right? So sometimes you're working with people that aren't necessarily your ideal client, and you can help them, but it's not who you ideally would like to be working with. So helping me to hone in on that was really helpful. So when I decided to leave the group practice, I got my own office in Midtown Manhattan. I started the practice in Florida a little bit before that by, renting office space with Kate and going down once a month and starting to build a name for myself down there, seeing people once a month in person, and then doing telehealth the other 3 weeks of the month while building the New York practice too. So it was a lot. It was a lot. Once I gave my notice at Cornell, I was doing both, and they understood that, everything was out in the open. So I was transitioning. My clients were transitioning. I would say about 90% of my clients came with me, which was like a nice help. And what else? I just started. I had an understanding of how the systems worked. I took Aetna before I even came to Cornell, when I had started my private practice part-time. So I was still credentialed with Aetna. I didn't feel the need to be credentialed with any other insurances because I also wanted to take private pay. So it was like a nice starter, but also left room for me to take on private pay clients. Yeah, and then just really honing my marketing skills and clarifying my niche, which is professional Black women and creative entrepreneurs.
Kimberly, tell us a little bit, because I know people are like wondering this. So here you are, like you finally jump into practice full time in 2018, and you decide to just like slather it all on, and you're like, I'm going to build a practice in two different locations. So I'm sure people are wondering, like, what are some of the similarities and differences of building a practice in two different locations?
Some of the similarities are, you need to market, and you need to build relationships, and you need to understand who your clients are, right? And so that is across the board. Also, even though the licensing process is a little different, in terms of requirements. There's still a licensing process. So going through that, having that together, understanding which CEs I take will apply to both states and things like that. So being mindful of those things, which I haven't had an issue with because I teach. And so it seems like the CEUs I get from teaching apply in both states. But it's something to be aware of. The differences are, I think it's really important to understand the culture of a place, or have an understanding of a culture, also having an understanding of the resources available in a place. So that way you can connect your clients as needed. I know a lot of people talk about like, well, I'm just going to get licensed in a bunch of states. And that's great, but you really do have to understand the culture of a place, because maybe your marketing is a little more nuanced in certain areas, right? Maybe the same language that you use in one place, you may not use in another. I know that both Florida and New York have large therapist communities, like there's a ton of therapists available. However, the type of services might differ. The type of therapy might differ. I know in New York is kind of like really like one of the homes of psychoanalysis and psychodynamic work. And that tradition is very strong in New York. And you have cognitive behavioral and solution focused and other modalities, definitely, but that is a big part of the therapy culture in New York. And that's not quite the case in South Florida, which is, in my experience, more cognitive behavioral, more solution focused, other modalities. Are there psychoanalysts there? Of course. Are there psychodynamic people there? Yes. But the therapy community is, I feel like, a little more diverse.
Interesting. And then also, so in talking about your own niche market and really marketing to women of color, do you find a difference between Florida and New York? And then how do you go about marketing if there's a difference?
Yes. So in my experience, there is stigma in the Black community, period, around mental health and seeking therapy. There are starting to be shifts with that, thankfully. South Florida, I feel, is a little more traditional in that sense. I've noticed that more of my clients are more skeptical about doing therapy or going to therapy, and talking about going to therapy. Whereas in New York, it's still a stigma, but there are more people doing it. I feel like my clients have more people in their lives who are kind of advocating for it than maybe in South Florida.
Mm-hmm. So I can imagine a lot of your marketing in South Florida is a little bit more of the validation, the thoughts that they might be thinking, the worries that they have, where in New York, it's a little bit more kind of like pro. So you're not having to do so much of that like validation up front, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's just more of a willingness, even though it's still there. Like you're saying, there's a little bit more stigma.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Very interesting.
Kim, you've been full for quite some time now, meaning you've had a full practice for quite some time. When did your practice actually become full? Because I know you have a waiting list and have for a while now.
Mm-hmm. So my practice became full, I would say when I left Cornell, I was in a good place. And then I took on a few more people. So not long after I stepped out on my own was I full. And it's just kind of continued that way ever since, where maybe I'll have like 1 or 2 openings and then those will fill pretty quickly. During the pandemic at the beginning, I kind of increased my capacity just to really help as many people as possible. I had clients coming back into therapy. And so then it was like a little bit of a situation where I was over full. So I had to scale back a bit, and now I'm just full. So I would say that I've been full for comfortably, like, give or take 1 or 2 spaces for the last 2 or 3 years.
That's amazing. And I know you were working in Manhattan. and had your own space there that you would commute each day to and from, and that was such a big part of your life. And then here in March 2020, we got hit with this pandemic. Talk to us a little bit about your experience navigating that and some of the decisions that you made with your practice.
Sure. So I think, like most people, in March, I was terrified, terrified for the coronavirus and what it was doing, but also terrified that, I'm self-employed. I work for myself. I'm full-time private practice. And if people don't want therapy or can't access it right now, then, I'm out of luck. But it's interesting. I had a conversation with my father talking about my fears, and my father was just like, no. He was like, I think you're going to have too much business. And he was right. And he was right with everything going on, because so many people need help right now. And so there's so many people that maybe wouldn't have thought about therapy in the past that are now open to the idea because they just need a place to process this. So like I said, it actually grew because I was home, because I didn't have to factor in the commute time and things like that. I was able to take on a few more clients. I eventually gave up my office, and I don't like to say give up because I don't feel like it was giving up. I feel like it was just a pivot or a change. I definitely could have kept it, but it just didn't seem to make good business sense, past a certain point. So in July, I moved out of my office. I'm thankful because of my relationships and my connections. I know that when I'm ready to go back to an office in New York, I have several options. But I'm looking at whether or not that will be the case. I don't know. I still, am lucky to have space with Kate in Florida. So that's there. But right now I'm doing telehealth, and I'm just focusing on offering in-person services. And I think I'll be doing that until there's a vaccine or some type of treatment for the virus.
So you mean offering like face to video, not in person? Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. So Kimberly, I'm curious, like, you talked about, your journey that someone told you even back in school that it's important to have a specialty and a niche. And a lot of times we don't really hear that. Right. And then we come into practice and we're generalists and we're exhausted and overwhelmed and chasing all the shiny objects. What are some of your key tips for people to have a successful private practice?
Okay. One is relationships. Relationships are really important. A lot of time we think about it as networking, but it's really relationship building. So really having good relationships with your colleagues, with community resources. And when I say relationships, I mean just that, not just somebody knowing your name, but people knowing who you work with, how you work, trusting the work that you do with clients, and you doing the same with them. And so really kind of sharing resources, sharing knowledge, maybe getting together every now and then. Now it's on Zoom, but if you're in a place where you can do it in person, and having coffee and just connecting. And maybe it's talking about cases, maybe it's talking about new modalities in the field or new tools, or maybe it's just talking about life. But I think relationship building is very important, because those are the people that are going to help drive clients to you, and they do so in a way where people want to work with you. It's one thing to say, oh, I know of a therapist on the corner, their name is Susie Smith, and it's another thing for somebody to say, Susie Smith is amazing.
Yes.
She is wonderful. I trust her. Here's her information. The likelihood of that client reaching out, skyrockets. The other thing I would say is understanding who you want to work with. I'm very big on that in private practice. I think a lot of times as mental health professionals, and I think especially social workers, you're kind of made to feel like, well, you should just help everybody and you should help anybody who comes to your door. And a lot of us are equipped to do that, and that's fine. But just because you're equipped to do something doesn't mean that that's what aligns with what you want to do. And that does impact how we work with our clients. So understanding who you want to work with and who you work with best is really important, and giving yourself permission to do that. because there are other people that may feel very passionately and want to work with the people that you don't necessarily want to work with. And so that's where those relationships and those referrals come in. Understanding whether or not you want to take insurance or private pay is also important, and thinking about your ideal client in that is important. I also think it's really important to have some type of coaching or mentoring around it, because it can be daunting. There are aspects of private practice. It's not as difficult as you think, and it is as difficult as you think. And I can't really explain that in more detail. It's just kind of something you have to experience. But really having a coach or a mentor or colleagues that have done it and can kind of help you walk through the process and help you understand what you need to focus on right now and maybe what you can push back to later is really important.
100%.
And
And Kimberly, talk a little bit about marketing. Did you like marketing coming into private practice? Did you not? You have a little bit of a background in marketing in a certain area, if I remember correctly.
I like marketing.
Okay.
I do. Yeah, I have a background in media and media management too. And I was always fascinated by it. I wouldn't say I'm a marketer, but in theory, I was fascinated by it. But putting it in practice is a little something different. But I just always looked at it as letting people know that you're out there. One of the things I did at Cornell that was part of my position was I did triage for our practice. So when people called, they would get the receptionist first, and then they would schedule them to speak with me for about 15, 20 minutes. So that way I could help them figure out who would be the best clinician for them. And that was really important, because it just always reminded me how many people are like, I don't understand this process. I don't know what I should be looking for, who I should be looking for. Okay, you all don't take my insurance. Where else can I go? I don't know how to find a therapist, And so it just, a lot of times as therapists, we're thinking like, oh my gosh, I hope somebody picks me. I hope clients find me. And it's like, no, you have to let people know you're out there, because there are people who are looking for you. And so that's how I think about marketing. It's letting people know that I exist. This is what I do. This is who I serve. And if you feel like it's a good fit and I feel like it's a good fit, let's work together. And if not, let me help you find somebody else to do that. But again, I need to know that people exist so that I can refer them to those people.
Beautifully said.
And Kimberly, what advice would you have for someone who really doesn't like marketing? They're uncomfortable. They get the ick factor. What would you say to them?
I would say, one, reframe how you think about it. Again, it's not about so much about like selling. There's some sales to it, but it's more about letting people know who you are and what you do, and how you can help them. And there's a genuine need for that, right? And then think about all the things that we consume. Like, somebody sold that to us. We saw value in it to buy it, right? So you're also offering value. It's not that you're making like empty promises. Like, you have gone through all this training, all this schooling, all this experience, all these hours, all this supervision. You're not a fraud. I think sometimes we feel like when we're selling, there's this imposter syndrome or this fraud, and you're not a fraud. You are offering what you're offering. You're not trying to bamboozle anybody. And the other thing about marketing is that I think it takes time. I have a lot of knowledge, but I haven't done half of what I probably could be doing. And that's a balance, right? Because I'm also working in my business, and sometimes it's hard to find time to work on my business. So it's something that I'm continually growing in, and I think it's something ongoing. So start with a small step. Maybe it's starting with a directory, and then it's a website. You don't have to do all the things at one time.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because when we create a company, right? Like we need clients or customers no matter what company it is. And so the
Mhm.
desire and the tendency is attempt to do all the things really fast. But the reality is you're right, you can't do them fast. It's like focus on that one thing, get that done, do the
Mhm.
next, and learn in the process. I really appreciate you sharing that about your marketing experience. And Kimberly, what's next for you? I mean, you've been full for a while, you have a waiting list, how are you evolving in your work?
So I'm also a coach and a yoga teacher. So I've been teaching yoga in terms of yin yoga, gentle yoga, beginner yoga, and prenatal yoga. Because a lot of my work is also working with women. I also do a lot of reproductive mental health. So I've also been integrating the yoga into the work I do with some of my therapy clients. And with the coaching, I'm expanding that. That is something I love to do. And I think it's another avenue to service people. So I've been coaching other therapists who are starting private practices, as well as um, professional women. And I'm in the process of building a coaching group for professional women who are trying to integrate wellness into their business and their life. I think a
Awesome.
lot of time as entrepreneurs, that is something that gets left out. Once you're doing it, it's great. And you're like, okay, I'm in my own business. But then before you know it, you know, you're struggling to manage all the things. And so then it doesn't always feel like there's time for you to take care of yourself. And when you do, it feels selfish. It feels like you could be doing something else with your time for somebody else or for your business. And so I really just want to help women learn how to center wellness in their lives instead of sticking it in where they can get it in.
It's
Love it.
so awesome to hear you talk about this, because I mean, there's just so many things that I've really enjoyed about this conversation, and you are crystal clear on who you're called to serve and how you want to help them. And in all these different areas of your work, everything is so serendipitous. It all just interconnected as a part of who you are and how you do your best work helping the women that you do. So thank you for being with us today and sharing your journey and the ups and the downs and twists and turns and all of that. We so appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And Kimberly, what do you want people to take away from your message today?
I want people to take away that if you feel, I love what you said, Kate, called, if you feel called to be in private practice, you can absolutely do it. It is there. You can do it. You have what it takes, and you can just take it one step at a time. You don't have to do all the things at once. And there are a lot of people probably around you or in your community that are going to be willing to help you.
Nice. Thank you. And I know that you have a giveaway for our audience today. What is that?
So I'm offering a free 30-minute coaching consultation for anyone who is interested in learning how to integrate wellness into their business and their life. And then also a tip sheet on integrating mindfulness and wellness into your business.
Nice. And we'll put all that stuff on the show notes page so you guys can get that. And also Kimberly's contact information will be there. Kimberly, thanks so much for joining us again. We can't wait to see you like face to face. But before we actually end the show, so it's funny, we're talking about wellness and health and whatever. And before we hit record, I noticed that you have a gaming chair, right? And Kate's like, what is that? And just share about your gaming chair, that's your therapy chair now, and how it helps you in the therapy process. Because I'm thinking about therapists and their back and their neck and all that stuff. So final wellness tip.
And I'm not getting paid for this. I have a chair. It's called by Maxnomic. And I had a client who was doing a lot of work from home way before the pandemic. I noticed she always had this chair that she was sitting in, and she told me about it. She said it's really comfortable. It's a gamer chair. I wasn't thrilled about it at first, but I looked into it because I'm really into like colors and design and things looking a certain way. And I had a really cute home goods chair that after doing 2 months of telehealth at home just was not working. There were just not enough pillows in the house to help. So I looked into this chair, maxnomic.com. They let you customize your office / gaming chair. So it's built to your weight, your height, like so many features. I got the chair and I'm in love with it now. And it's been such a good decision for me. And I think that's one of the things about integrating wellness into your business, right? So what do I need to do to be well so that I can deliver the services I need to my clients? And things that seem so small actually make such a huge difference.
100%. And thanks so much for sharing that. And I just found it very
Yes.
interesting because that is really what, you exude. And, for someone who has chronic over 2 decades neck and back problems, I am always looking for that perfect thing. And with therapists doing telehealth all day, every day, we want you guys to be well. So there we go. We're extending Kimberly's niche and her commitment out in the world right to you through this gaming chair and this podcast. Kimberly, again, thank you so much for joining us. And, if you've been listening to this podcast and you are wondering how we can help and support you, Kate and I offer our marketing e-course, which is available 24/7, 365. It's a self-study program. You can do it on your own time. And then we launch our coaching program several times a year. And that is more of like a 12-week style where we are doing the e-course, but also teaching you the different aspects through group coaching. So we'll also put that on the show notes page as well. And Startup Nation, we hope that you guys join us next week. And Kate and I are actually going to take a step back and we're going to be talking about reflections of 2020. So join us in that conversation.
Thank you both for having me today. It was great to be able to come back and talk to you both.
Thanks so much for being here, Kim. It's always great to see your face. And I hope Startup Nation enjoyed listening to your story as much as we did today. And I just want to give a quick Startup Nation superhero shout out to Evans. Evans says, Kate and Katie are amazing. They have great resources for anyone new to private practice. Evans, thank you so much for that review and positive feedback. And we hope that you guys are enjoying the content that we're creating through our podcast, through Level Up videos that come out in our Facebook group, and all the other resources that we do provide. So if there's a topic that we haven't talked about yet that you guys are longing for, definitely let us know. Send us an email. Or if there's something that you're loving too, we love getting those surprise emails from you guys just saying how these podcast episodes have helped you along your journey. So we will look forward to seeing you next time. And in the meantime, stay inspired, and we will see you on the next episode.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.